What if the reason you still feel empty isn't because no one listens, but because you've been telling the wrong people? You opened your heart, you explained your pain, you shared everything you could put into words, and for a moment it felt lighter, but then the silence returned. The weight came back, and deep down nothing really changed, because not every ear is meant to carry your soul, and not every listener knows what to do with your pain. Scripture never tells us to pour ourselves out to everyone. It says, trust in Him at all times. Pour out your heart before Him. God is a refuge for us. Psalm 62:8. Not before everyone, before Him. That changes everything. Because maybe the issue was never your need to be heard, but where you chose to be heard. You kept going to people, hoping they could hold what only God was designed to carry. And that's why it still feels empty, because human understanding has limits. But God doesn't just listen. He restores. He doesn't just hear, He heals. So maybe today isn't about finding another person to talk to. Maybe it's about returning to the one who already knows. Stop searching for comfort in every voice. Come back to the voice that never fails. And this time, don't just speak. Trust Him with what you say. Part 1. Not everyone can carry the weight of your heart. What if the reason your heart feels heavier after you share it is because you gave it to someone who was never meant to carry it? That sounds uncomfortable, but it's real. Not everyone who listens to you is assigned to protect you. Some people hear your story, but don't understand your spirit. Some nod, respond, even sympathize, but they don't have the capacity to hold what you just handed them. And without realizing it, you walk away feeling more exposed than healed. Scripture speaks to this with quiet clarity. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. Proverbs 11:13. That means there are two kinds of people in your life, those who can carry your heart and those who can't. The danger is not that you have something to share. The danger is sharing something sacred with someone who treats it casually, because your pain is not just information, it's weight. And when you place that weight in the wrong hands, it doesn't get lifted, it gets mishandled. As a believer, you need discernment, not suspicion, not fear, discernment. You have to ask, is this person spiritually equipped to handle what I'm about to reveal? Because not everyone is, and that's not rejection, that's wisdom. God never intended for your heart to be public property. He designed it to be guarded, valued, and entrusted carefully. So here's the shift. Stop measuring connection by how much you can say. Start measuring it by how safe your spirit remains after you speak. And before you open your heart again, ask God to show you who is truly meant to carry it. Part 2. Oversharing is silently draining your peace and power. What if the more you talk about your pain, the weaker your peace becomes? It feels backward, doesn't it? We've been taught that expressing everything brings freedom, but in the kingdom, not everything that feels like release is actually healing. Sometimes it's leakage. Every time you retell the wound, relive the moment, replay the emotion, you're not just sharing it, you're reinforcing it. And slowly, quietly, your peace begins to drain. Scripture warns us with precision. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint. Proverbs 17, verse 27. Notice that. Restraint is not silence out of fear, it's control out of wisdom, because not every feeling deserves a voice, and not every thought needs to be spoken. When you give words to everything inside you, you lose the ability to discern what actually matters. Your spirit becomes noisy, and in that noise, God's voice becomes harder to recognize. Oversharing doesn't just expose your story, it weakens your authority over it. The more you speak from emotion, the more emotion leads you, and eventually, you're no longer processing your pain, you're being shaped by it. That's why some conversations leave you feeling worse, not better. You didn't release the burden, you multiplied it. As a believer, your words carry weight. They shape your perspective. They either align you with truth or anchor you in feeling. So here's the shift. Before you speak, pause. Before you explain, pray. Let God filter what should be said and what should be surrendered. Because real power is not in saying everything. It's in knowing what to keep between you and God. Part 3. You're running to people before running to God. What if the problem isn't that God feels distant, but that He's been your second option all along? That's a hard truth. But be honest, when something breaks inside you, who do you run to first? A friend, a message, a voice that can answer quickly, and only after the conversations, after the opinions, after the noise, then you turn to God. Not first, last, and without realizing it, you've reversed the very order your spirit was designed to live by. Scripture calls us back with clarity. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, present your requests to God. Philippians 4:6. Not after you've exhausted every human option, not when nothing else works, in every situation. First, because God was never meant to be your backup plan, He is your source. When you run to people first, you receive their perspective before you receive God's truth. Their emotions shape yours, their limits become your ceiling, and slowly, subtly, your faith weakens, not because God stopped speaking, but because you filled the space with other voices. You were looking for comfort, but missed alignment. As a follower of Christ, this is the shift. Before you explain your pain to anyone else, bring it raw and unfiltered to God. Let Him meet you there. Let Him steady your heart before anyone else speaks into it. Because when God becomes your first response, everything else falls into its right place. So today, change the order. Don't run outward, run upward, and watch how peace begins to replace the noise. Part 4. The wrong ears can distort what God is doing in you. What if the reason you feel confused about what God is doing in your life is because you let the wrong people interpret it? That's the tension. God begins a work in you, quiet, deep, personal, and before it has time to take root, you bring it to voices that don't recognize it. And suddenly what was once clear feels uncertain. What was once peaceful feels questioned. Not because God changed, but because the ears you trusted reshaped what you heard. Jesus warned us with striking clarity, "Do not give what is holy to dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine." Matthew 7:6. That's not harsh, it's protective, because what God is forming in you is not common, it's sacred, and not every person has the spiritual sensitivity to handle it. Some will reduce it, some will doubt it, some will speak from their fear, not from God's truth. And if you're not grounded, their voice can begin to sound louder than His. This is how distortion happens. You share something God is growing, and someone else measures it through their own limitations. They don't see what God sees, they don't hear what He said, and without realizing it, you start questioning what was once a conviction, not because it was wrong, but because it was exposed too early to the wrong ears. As a believer, you must guard not only what you say, but who you say it to. Not every moment is meant to be explained. Not every revelation is meant to be validated by people. Some things are meant to stay between you and God until they are strong enough to stand. So here's the shift. Stop looking for confirmation in every voice. Go back to the one who spoke it first, and let His truth be louder than every opinion around you. Part 5. There is power in godly silence. What if the strongest thing you could do right now is say nothing? That goes against everything we're taught. We think strength is proving, explaining, defending, but in the kingdom, silence is not weakness, it's authority under control. It's the ability to hold your peace when everything in you wants to react. And that kind of restraint doesn't come from passivity, it comes from trust. Scripture reveals this rhythm with precision. There is a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Ecclesiastes 3:7. Notice, it doesn't say silence is absence. It says silence has a time, a purpose, a weight, because not every moment is meant for words. Some moments are meant for God to work without interference, and when you rush to speak, you interrupt what He may be doing in you and through you. Godly silence is not hiding your truth, it's guarding it. It's choosing not to explain what God has not yet finished revealing. It's resisting the urge to defend yourself when God is your defender. And in that space, something powerful happens. Your emotions settle, your spirit aligns, your dependence shifts from people back to God. Jesus Himself modeled this. There were moments He answered, and moments He remained silent, even when accused, misunderstood, and pressed, not because He had nothing to say, but because He knew when speaking would add nothing to what God was already establishing. So here's the shift. Stop treating silence as loss. Start seeing it as strength. Before you respond, pause. Before you explain, listen. Let God shape your words, or remove the need for them entirely, and trust that when you don't speak, God still is. Part 6. What you share too early can be easily broken. What if the reason some things in your life never grew is because you exposed them too soon? That sounds subtle, but it's powerful. Note everything God places in you is ready to be seen by others. Some things are still forming, still fragile, still in process, and when you rush to share them, before they've taken root, you risk placing something delicate into an environment that can't sustain it. Scripture gives us a clear command. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Guarding doesn't mean hiding out of fear. It means protecting what God is growing until it's strong enough to stand. Because not every idea, not every healing, not every calling is meant to be announced at the beginning. Some things need silence before they need affirmation. Here's what happens when you share too early. You invite opinions before you've built conviction. You expose something sacred to people who may not understand it. And suddenly doubt creeps in, not because God changed His direction, but because you allowed outside voices to speak into something that wasn't ready to be questioned. What God intended to grow quietly gets shaken prematurely. As a believer, you have to recognize timing. God doesn't just care about what He's doing in you. He cares about when it's revealed. There is a season where things must remain between you and Him, not forever, but for now. So here's the shift. Stop rushing to announce what God has only just begun. Let it grow in the dark. Let it deepen in silence, and trust that when the time is right, God Himself will make it visible, strong, rooted, and unshaken. Part 7. God sends the right people at the right time. What if the reason you keep sharing with the wrong people is because you're trying to force connections God never sent? That's a hard truth. We assume that if someone is available, they're assigned. If they're present, they're safe. But in the kingdom, not every connection is divine. Some are temporary, some are situational, and only a few are truly God-sent, placed in your life at the right time, with the right spirit for the right purpose. Scripture reveals the power of the right person with clarity. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Proverbs 27:17. Notice, real connection doesn't just listen. It refines, it strengthens, it brings you closer to truth, not deeper into confusion. The right person doesn't just carry your pain, they help align your perspective with God's voice. And that kind of relationship is not common. It's cultivated, it's discerned, and most importantly, it's sent. The problem is, when you rush to fill emotional gaps, you lower your discernment. You start choosing based on availability, not spiritual alignment. And that's how you end up sharing something sacred with someone who was never meant to steward it. But when you trust God with your process, something shifts. You stop chasing people and you start recognizing them. Because God is not just concerned with what you're going through, He's also intentional about who walks with you through it. He knows when you need counsel. He knows when you need silence. And when the time is right, He will bring the right person, someone who doesn't just hear you, but helps you stand. So here's the shift. Stop forcing access. Stop opening your heart out of urgency. Trust God's timing, not just in your healing, but in your connections. And believe this, the right person doesn't have to be searched for, they will be revealed. Part 8. God's way is always better. Start with Him first. What if the breakthrough you're waiting for isn't in another conversation, but in a different starting point? Not who you talk to, but when you talk to God. Because we've learned to go everywhere first. We explain, we vent, we search for understanding, and only after all of that, we finally pray. But God's way was never meant to be your last step. It was always meant to be your first. Scripture makes it simple and unshakable. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and He will make your paths straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. Not after you've figured it out, not after you've gathered opinions, as you trust first. Because when God becomes your starting point, everything else aligns differently. Your emotions settle, your thoughts clear, your direction sharpens. What once felt overwhelming begins to make sense in His presence. Here's the truth most people miss. God's way doesn't just give you answers, it changes how you see the problem. You may still face the same situation, the same people, the same tension, but when you begin with Him, you no longer carry it the same way. You're not driven by panic, you're led by peace, and that peace becomes your guide. As a follower of Christ, this is the shift that changes everything. Before you speak outward, go inward with God. Before you explain your situation, surrender it. Let Him filter your thoughts. Let Him anchor your heart. Let Him decide what needs to be said and what needs to be left in His hands. So today, start differently. Don't wait until you're overwhelmed to seek Him. Begin there, and watch how His way, quiet, steady, and certain, proves itself better than anything you've tried before. Conclusion, you were never meant to be understood by everyone, only by God. What if the peace you've been chasing was never meant to come from being understood by everyone? That sounds almost disappointing at first. We all want to be seen, heard, fully known, so we keep explaining ourselves, hoping that one more conversation, one more person, one more moment of clarity will finally make us feel whole. But the truth is deeper than that. You were never designed to be fully understood by people. You were designed to be completely known by God. And maybe that's why it still feels empty, because you kept telling everyone your problems, hoping someone could fix what only God could heal. But Jesus already gave the invitation, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Not come to everyone, not come when nothing else works, just come, because real rest is not found in human understanding, it's found in divine presence. As a believer, this is the shift that changes everything. Stop measuring your worth by who understands you. Start anchoring your heart in the one who already does. God doesn't need explanations. He sees what you can't even put into words. He carries what no one else can hold. So today, choose differently. Stop running in circles, searching for the right person to hear you. Go to the right place instead. Come back to God. Bring Him everything, without filtering, without performing, and let His understanding be enough.